We are so excited to have you with us today as we dive into our 8 transformational principles for leading change at our organizations. Just a few nuts and bolts. We welcome your questions and comments. Just keep those coming in Q&A or chat. I will be keeping an eye out for them, and we'll get to as many as we can live. If we don't get to you live, we will make sure to follow up with you. Following today's presentation, we're also going to send you an email with a link to our recording and any other materials that we end up mentioning today. So we have a full house already, and I know we have a very full agenda. So without further ado, I will hand things on over to my esteemed colleague, the one and only John Cleve.
All right. Well, thank you all. I appreciate being given the opportunity to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, which is actually making organizational change through L&D. And I'm going to be talking about 8 principles that SweetRush has found to be very useful in guiding learning design to bring about organizational change. And I'm going to contrast those against 9 case studies where L&D brought about change. And I'm going to describe how the principles were in play for each of these studies. So it's rapid fire. I won't be getting deep into the content of each case study, but hopefully I tell you enough about it that you understand how the principles were going. And without further ado, here are the principles. And it's a framework that we actually took a couple years to develop here at SweetRush as a way for us to be able to talk about learning design with each other and with clients. And, basically think of them as lenses that we use to look at a learning design and decide whether it's going to bring about the results that we look for. 4 of them are focused on the learning experience itself, or LX. And you'll hear me saying LX quite a bit today. That means the learning experience. It could be an e-learning module, could be a PDF, could be a in-class session, you name it. Those are all LXs in our parlance. Tiffany just posted a link to the one-page PDF that explains each of the 8. So I encourage you to click it and download it just so you have it on hand. So when I mention the 8, that you'll know what I'm talking about. So to go through them real briefly, concerning the LX itself, the first principle is relevance. It should build on what's important to your learners so they engage. The what's in it for me or with them is critical in an LX. The second is adaptive, which means you acknowledge the fact that people are different. Some have differences in experiences or roles, responsibilities, interests. So an LX should accommodate those differences, ideally build upon them. The third one is intuitive. The LX should be easy to comprehend. You don't want them spending time figuring out what should I click and what should I be doing next. You want them to be focusing in on the content. So make it intuitive, easy to get through, straightforward. And then the fourth one is efficiency. That an LX it should respect learners' times. People have very little to devote to training. Josh Person did a research that found they have 27 minutes a week on average to devote to training. So let's make sure we make use of each of those minutes. And then there's 4 principles that focus on what results came about for people having worked through the experience. First one being memorable. So they should be able to apply it to their knowledge, the knowledge and skills of their routines. They've got to be able to remember it and remember how to do it. The LX should better integrate people. For connective, it needs to integrate people into the systems, into the organization that they're in, into social networks, connect them with their managers, connect them with others and with technologies, so that they can operate better in the world. The third principle is empowering, that the LX should equip learners with the means to act. And a big piece of empowering is confidence. You've got to feel like you're able to do the things that the training is telling you to do. So there's both the confidence piece and that you've given them the tools and the skills that they can exercise. And then the final one is the gold standard, effective. End of the day, it should make people better at something, better able to perform, greater understanding of what they're doing. And this is what, in effect, brings about an organizational improvement. So there are the 8. You've got the one-pager in the link to download if you want to use it to follow along. And we'll move on. SweetRush has a belief that the way to bring about change is to change people, that change comes through people. And therefore you're really looking at a transformation of some sort. It could be a small T transformation, get them to stop making that mistake they make in order to help. It may be a big T, make them into something fundamentally better and different. And so transformation is really where we like to focus our energies. And what that really entails is getting them to think and act differently. That'll help them in their job and in their careers, and that consequently helps the organization and ultimately the world as a whole. I mean, oftentimes we're helping managers make life better for their employees. We're helping crisis workers keep people alive and safe, helping nurses handle violence in the workplace, and on and on. I mean, that's the reason why I'm in L&D ultimately, and I'm guessing it's the same with you. So here are the 9 case studies that I'm going to be working through. They represent a wide range of organizations and learning needs. Some were just a few hours of training. Some require months to complete. All of them achieved some degree of organizational change, and all of them exemplified one or more of the principles that I just shared, and therefore are notable for this talk. Now, in order to protect intellectual property and business strategy, I masked the identity of each organization and omitted some clarifying details. But trust me, they're all real, and they're real needs and real results. And again, like I said before, I'm going to go through them rapidly, and I'm doing that just so you can kind of see the patterns across them, see how the principles bear out across different contexts and situations. All right, so let's get into the first one. In this one, it was a global hospitality chain. They have 7,000 properties under 19 brands in 119 countries. They have 28,000 team members, and because this is a premier brand, getting them to offer exceptional customer service is critical. As they put it, they want to move them from great to the next level of great, because this was pivotal to their brand, fairly critical. So what we did with them, collaborating with them, was come up with a combination of e-learning, group-led training, weekly team huddles, and we also hosted a conference for all the general managers and sales directors where we explain what we're trying to do with regards to the training. And the results were fantastic. 80% of the properties that participated saw an increase in customer satisfaction scores. Service was up 6%. Staff helplessness was up 3%. Problem-free stays were also up 3%. These are numbers that they track very closely, and when they grow, so does revenue. So fairly central to the whole focus and goal of the organization. Make people happier, they come and stay with you, everybody wins. So now let's look at how the principles relate to this. There's really 3 of them that I'm calling out for this particular one. The first one, under the effective standard, they established a clear KPI to focus on the start, which was the customer satisfaction scores. They live and die by the customer satisfaction score, and it really gives them a accurate metric and a true north that they can use in order to help refine and improve training to get there. That's a key piece of the effective standard, is establish a metric that you're going to use to indicate whether you're achieving what you're trying to achieve. For the connective standard, they saw the importance of senior leader buy-in. They recognized that they had to have everybody from top down all gearing toward that next level of great. And so they devoted a whole annual conference to the initiative, and they got senior leaders to participate in the training, both as learners and then also to conduct the huddles and to get their local properties on board and churning. And then the final piece under adaptive is flexibility was a huge thing of this. It was a lot of time and care was put into making it so that it could be implemented in different ways for different audiences. It gave the L&D group and folks a lot of different options for how to conduct the training. Face-to-face, you could have e-learning, you can do combinations. Flexibility was a huge piece of this. So that's the first case study. Second one is a financial services company, 5 million customers and 1,500 branches. They value a high-touch, customer-centered approach. So they're very much about customer service. One of the issues they faced was the fact that they were having a high turnover with their seasoned bankers. So they were losing a lot of experience out the door for various reasons, and recognized that they have to bring new folks up to speed. But they have to do it quickly because they had positions to fill, and customers aren't going anywhere. They need their accounts opened and their information about their finances and so on. So we worked with them to re-engineer their onboarding and management training programs. And we converted it from a week-long, or actually 2-week-long ILT sessions into bite-sized modules, which could be consumed flexibly. We also created job aids that learners could access when they're on the job in order to find the information they need to better service customers, which is true LIFO, learning in the flow of work, was a big piece of the approach. And the results were good. They reduced time from taking 50 hours on average to get bankers up to speed to about half that. And they did that without sacrificing the quality of the training. That they too use customer satisfaction scores in order to determine kind of the health and productivity of their branches, and didn't see any drop in customer satisfaction. So huge win for them. Get people into the place faster, and so on, and yet still provide the high touch that they're known for. A couple of the principles come to play here, and certainly one of which is we came up with an apprenticeship model. And the idea there is that as they're doing the onboarding, for people who are showing proficiency and who are seeming to get it, they got them out on the floor in order to handle simpler customer requests, like to look up a balance or make a wire transfer. And then they would allow them to do additional training, but they're already on the job working. Was a huge piece of this because of the fact that you're getting them up to speed quicker, and more, they're able to see how the skills and knowledge that they're acquiring is going to translate into customer service. And it allowed them gave them context for subsequent training. And it also allowed them to focus on the learners that need more time. So if they have somebody who is struggling a little bit, they were able to usher them into their productive role more slowly to give them more time to get up to speed. So the apprenticeship model was a very valuable element in the learning design. From a memorability standpoint, learners could experience what it's like to handle real customer requests, because they're out on the floor, and therefore the learning subsequent to that is going to have greater sticking power. We found that was very true, that they could see kind of everything in context by actually dealing with customers and real world problems. And then from an efficiency standpoint, just like I talked about previously, modularizing the training units so you can mix and match them for specific roles, regions, and learner capabilities was a huge affordance. The old approach was a fire hose of information that everybody got. The new approach, they were able to segment training out to give people what they need when they need it, and not to overwhelm them with the stuff they didn't. So modular training is a huge win when it comes to efficiency. All right, we're on to number 3, onboarding new hires from day 0. So imagine that you just got a job offer from a company and you said yes. You're excited, right? This is great. This is a new chapter in your life. Hooray, let's go out to dinner with the family. But then you hear nothing from them for weeks. It's like radio silence. What impression does that make for you? Chances are you're like, what the heck? I was excited. Is the company as excited about me? So we are working with a company that has 100,000 employees scattered across 6 regions and 3 different divisions. And they saw that a lot of new hires were getting lost in the shuffle. Many weren't making it 6 months in. And they thought that perhaps it was because they were being treated in such a separate, isolated way. And as a consequence, we collaborating with them, we created a whole separate website that was just dedicated to employee onboarding. So that when they got a letter that acknowledged their letter of acceptance, in that email that acknowledged it was a link to a site that was focused, as you see on the screens here, was focused on getting you up to speed, telling you everything you need, giving you links to resources and talking about benefits and all the other stuff. So from day 0, they received information on what they could expect from the company when they on the first day on the job and beyond. We hosted it externally because, like a lot of very large companies, IT isn't always the quickest to get people into the system and ready to go. So we thought it was really important to hit them on day 0. So we just built a separate site and then gave them the means to access that site. So we didn't have to wait on IT to get them their emails and get them going. And the result was great. It earned a 98 net promoter score. They also got a lot of feedback that said that they really appreciated the touch. The new employees rated the experience 4.3 on a scale of 5. They also had high participation rates. They had 89% of all the new hires decided to take advantage of the website, which is over 1,200 folks or so, at least in the time that we were measuring that. So really good marks. And I think that there were three principles that come to mind here. First one is efficiency and connectiveness. With efficiency, it matters with onboarding. I mean, somebody made a big decision in their lives to take a job. Don't leave them hanging. A lot of people expressly said they appreciate that they were given the information right at the point that they made that decision. Also, one thing we discovered that is very interesting to us is as part of the design of this website, as you can see on the right where it says "That's amazing," we gave people a chance to see other new hires in this kind of orbital, space or oriented theme, and that was surprisingly well received. Didn't expect people to really call it out, but I think when you're a new hire, you can kind of feel alone in the world, and that particular screen was letting them see that, hey, you're one of a cadre of people that are coming in. You're not alone. There's lots of people who are new to the company. And you could actually click on them and see, oh, they're in my region, or yeah, they're doing the same job as me, and people loved it. It was very, very surprising to us. And then finally, on the effective piece, one thing we want to point out is that L&D can't do everything, because imagine you're this new hire and you get this website and you're feeling great about the company, and then you start your first day on the job and it takes 3 weeks to get a laptop, or you don't have email that works, right? Or you don't know where to go to get, whatever your benefits in, or so on. And so, L&D can't do it all. You have to be kind of in sync with the company and the infrastructure to bring everything about. That's going to be a critical piece to keeping people happy, and therefore sticking to the job and staying around.
John, we've got
Uh,
a lot of interest in this. I wonder if we might pause for a couple questions.
yeah, we sure can.
All right. I've got Ellen here in chat who's asking, how do you get managers involved and how did their practice change for this solution here?
Yeah, well, for this particular one, I mean, there's others, and you'll see it in the next one. It was very much more explicit. I think this one was a lot about bringing up the need, emphasizing the need here to managers that they are the main point of contact to their employees, and they can't just leave it to global to corporate headquarters to onboard and get people feeling good about that. So we didn't actually formally allow them to reach out to their employees between the time they accepted and when they were on the job on day one, for a whole lot of reasons. And there's legal reasons why you don't do that, because day one is the official day that you're working there. But nonetheless, I think in this particular case, we imparted to them that they have to make sure that their guys are that people that they hired are happy, understand what they need to do, aware of the role, and so forth. You'll see in the next one that that'll show you that we made it a much more formal piece of the onboarding process, and relied on the managers very heavily to deliver a lot of the training that we wanted them to deal with.
Fabulous. Grace is also wondering what resources were available in this onboarding platform.
Yeah, and again, this one was really mainly the website. There was also links to their benefits, compensation and benefits pages, so that they could look over what their various medical, insurance choices are. They could look at the 401k and the retirement stuff that's going on. So there were a lot of links from this particular website to other places that listed it out, included a lot of PDFs and such that they could use in order to get started thinking about it. They weren't formally required to do anything other than absorb, because again, you're not paying them anything until day one. So it's loose, but there were certainly links to a lot of the things that they were going to be having to accomplish in days 1 through 8. And then the next one again that I'm going to show you is also about onboarding, and that one I can go a little more deeply into the particular elements that we included in order to achieve a very similar kind of thing. Bring them in the family, make them feel like they're part of something, get them excited. So I'll show you on the next one how to get that in there.
Good. And finally, John, this one goes back to item one. Um, Sandeep is wondering if the solution had any impact on the learner's iteration problem, or did it increase their customer satisfaction scores?
Yes, I mean certainly. I mean they break and just to show you here, I just to go back to one. This is the one I was talking about. That was the hospitality company. I mean their CSAT scores were not just a single score. It was actually a collection of scores, and so they were looking at problem resolution. They were looking at how MPS and other. Things like that. So staff helpfulness, quality of service, problem-free stay. And so CSAT was a multivariate indicator and generally focused in on obviously customer reports, as they call them, guest reports that were coming in. She was referring to item to the next
Oh,
one.
oops. Sorry about that, Sandeep. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, for number two, that is uh, a really good question. I think this was a smile sheet at the end of the onboarding to ask. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was the ESAT. The employee satisfaction was a smile sheet where it was about there. The CSAT, that's a good question. How deep it was. I know it's in our case study that we wrote up for Brandon Hall. Off the top of my head, I'm not exactly sure what the data was in that form. I'm guessing it was similar to what I just brought up for the hospitality company, that it was a combination of how likely are you to recommend a friend? What did you feel that your needs were being met? Was the person helpful to you? Did they resolve it? The kind of information that customer facing, retail oriented organizations typically collect on a regular basis. But I honestly, in front of me, I don't have the actual specific questions and answers.
Can follow up with you on
It
that,
isn't a case
Sandeep.
study. Yeah.
Wow, we'll check back into that.
Yeah. All
All
right.
right. Let's hear about number four, another
All right.
onboarding, right?
So here's number four. Also onboarding. So this is a global manufacturer. They have facilities all over the world, Africa, Asia, Europe, South America, North America. It's a family run company, and as a result, they really want new hires to feel they joined the family. That was huge to them. One of the challenges that they face, though, is that they don't have one centrally coordinated L&D group. They have L&D at in each of the regions and at each of the facilities, and so they can't simply do a master plan and then have every new hire across the globe going into it. They really have to work with the local communities and the local facilities and give them a high degree of ownership over this. And that was a big piece, a big factor that went into the learning design, because we recognized that we had to give flexibility to local HR folks that were, maybe in a manufacturing plant in, southern France or one in China and so forth. So we knew we just had to give them a lot of different options for doing it. They also deal with two distinct communities. They have hourly employees, most of them working in production, who don't have access to a computer. And for all sorts of reasons, legal and otherwise, the use of their phones is also prohibited here. So they can't deliver a digital onboarding program to some of the audience. On the other hand, they have other people who are they're hiring who do have access to a desktop or to mobile. So we couldn't just come up with a digital only solution. We had to actually create both a digital and an analog equivalent for each of the pieces. So we had a physical escape room game as well as a virtual one. We had a physical and digital welcome gifts because we wanted to give them a gift as a way of thanking them for joining the company. Everything that we had to have an analog equivalent to it, which obviously drives up price and increases effort. But there was no way else to play this because of the fact that some people just can't get to a computer to take on e-learning, let's say. The other element of this, like I said earlier, is that the manager's role is critical in this, that the managers have to deliver much of the onboarding, get them familiar with their role, and with their teammates and understand how processes and procedures work and so on. So managers have to be a pretty critical, central role in delivering it out. So we created a SharePoint site for them for managers and tried to make it as easy as possible so that managers can manage a new hires day at day 1 through 7, day 7 through 21, day 21 through 28. So all of the resources they need, be it slide decks or PDFs or checklists, are all right there at the fingertips of the managers. And as a result, they were able to get it deployed successfully across all the continents and regions. We're early on getting the numbers. They're looking at KPIs like retention rates, productivity metrics, employee surveys, exit interviews, participation rates, and so on. But so far, they are putting people through the new onboarding program that was defined, and people are getting into place and able to become productive. So we're hoping in the weeks and months to come, we're going to be seeing more hard numbers that tell us that the organization is truly doing better at this critical job. When I look at the principles that are going on here, first of all, the fact that it was implementable by local L&D, which is an efficiency thing for us. I'm marking the efficiency principle. That was key. We knew from the moment we started to develop this onboarding program that we had to give them a big say in how they did it. I mean, China is a very different place to conduct training than the U.S. And if you're going to develop a one size fits all, it's not going to work in places. So we knew we had to keep things modular, able to be mix and match, able to be adapted and changed and modified for the needs of the local group that's doing it. And as I said before, too, from an adaptive standpoint, we knew that we couldn't just do digital only. So we had to give them both digital and analog. And again, it increased cost, but there was no choice to make it adaptive. The audiences were so different. And then, like I was talking about with the managers on a connective basis, incorporate the managers into the role, the key role of onboarding. Rely on them to deliver a lot of this. Don't do it all just based on kind of corporate training that's out there, but provide the means for managers to deliver on it, which will aid in connectiveness. It'll make the person, the new hire, feel like they're part of something and their manager cares and the manager's trying to get them up to speed. And connectivity is a huge piece of people feeling happy and healthy in the jobs that they're in. All right, number 5. In this case, imagine that you traveled a great distance, you check into a hotel, you're really tired, and you just want to sleep, but the stupid air conditioning unit is rattling. And you're laying there and you decide, I got to go down and complain about this. So you go down to the front desk and you're like, what's up? You got to fix that. How that person responds makes all the difference in the world. And in fact, Tiffany, I think that you've even studied this particular thing. It's almost more important than coming up with a solution, because if the person at the front desk doesn't really care or just says, okay, I'll send somebody up, and doesn't acknowledge that it's a real pain and you're tired and it's hard, you're even if they do send somebody up and they fix it, you're going to be kind of annoyed. And so they recognize that you have to be able to handle it from the moment the complaint comes to you. They had a model called the HEART model that they used, where you show you've heard the customer, you empathize with their problem, you apologize for the inconvenience, you respond, come up with a resolution to it, and thank them for bringing it to your attention. So they have this model, but the big thing is, how do you have people be able to practice that? And so we used AI, Gen AI here. So we came up with an e-learning module, as you can see it going here, where kind of a virtual reality like thing. The customer comes up and says, hey, my air conditioning unit is rattling. What the heck's going on? You got to get me a new room. And then you click the microphone on your browser and you speak a response. You try to follow the HEART model to say, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. We'll get somebody up there right away. I let us know, and I thank you for coming here. And then that is then converted into text. It's fed into the large language model, who is also given the HEART model to apply to it. And then the system will come back with feedback and say, yeah, you did a good job of hearing them. You were empathetic, but you forgot to apologize, or you didn't come up with the right resolution. And by the way, the right resolution is never to give them a free night. That's a rule at the company, everything but, and then also to thank them. So, it worked real well. They had a decrease in the reporting of customer problems, and they saw an increase in those saying that an employee handled their problem well. Another piece that comes out of the results is because we converted this thing into text, we captured every single participant's response to the thing. And that's a gold mine of data. We have the actual text of what they said to the customer, and we can begin to look, are people consistently making the same mistake? Are there regional variances in that? So we haven't really dove as deep as we'd like to into all of those responses that we're getting. May very well use Gen AI in order to do an aggregated analysis of this to say, find 5 patterns across these 10,000 responses. This is all pretty nascent, so we're still in the midst of figuring it out, but we know that that's a gold mine of data. And so what are the principles that are here? The first one is around efficiency, which is there's no way we would have done this with live role play. Technology was critical for scale. I mean, with technology, people can practice wherever. They can practice on their phone. They can practice on a desktop. It is huge for scale, and they can practice as much as they want. You just couldn't do any of that with live role play. It would be very difficult. So technology was a critical enabler of efficiency. Also, relevance and intuitiveness is the fact that it's a real world issue. I mean, you see a customer coming up and complaining that there's no gluten-free options in the lunchroom, or complaining about the air conditioner, or complaining about the late check-in, and you're right there with them, and you can obviously see this is what I need to be able to handle. And then when they do their response, they just click and speak a response. It's very intuitive. There's not a whole lot of clicking or looking through a set of choices. And so relevance and intuitiveness is gained when you come up with a immersive simulation like this. And then finally, it's very adaptive, because if you do it right, we just come back and go, great, you nailed it. Don't have to give you feedback. On the other hand, if you do it hopelessly bad, we can talk about, look, you never said that you showed that you heard the customer. I didn't hear an apology, right? That you didn't give them a resolution. So it's personalized to each learner, each response, and they can practice as much as they feel they need to in order to achieve a level of proficiency. So very much along the ADAPT principle that we talked about. And I'll show you that, none of the outcome-based principles are shown here. And that's mainly because we've heard, anecdotally that it's been well received and people are doing it, but we don't yet have the data, hard data that'll tell us right now that, yeah, this has improved CSAT by 6 points or whatever. That's still coming in. So, this is a new technology. It's still going out, but I want to point out that, we just don't have the data to be able to say that we nailed it. But hope too soon. Let's put it that way.
Fingers
Number
crossed.
6.
John,
Okay.
quick question here.
Yeah.
Jack is pointing out that we mentioned modular a few times, and he's curious about how that mix and match is accomplished. Just wanted to put that out there before we get too far forward.
Yeah, I mean, if it's e-learning for the mix and match, a lot of that's handled at the LMS level. So you get these SCORM package that are in there, and then you create, either multiple courses that have different combinations of them in there, or at a curriculum level. Like if you build them each as a course, depending on your LMS, then you at a curriculum level begin to say, okay, this is the sequence of courses for people who are in the Eastern region who are handling front-facing employees and so on. Another thing we've done in other cases is we've created the adaptiveness within the e-learning module. So it's one module and one course to manage, but within there, we might say, hey, if you're a frontline employee, click here. If you're a backups individual or an IT, click over here. And then depending on where you click, we'll take you through different journeys within the e-learning. It's more complex to do, but then on the other hand, all they have to do is send somebody to one course. They don't have to do the mixing and matching at the LMS level. The one thing I'll point out when you're doing a modular approach is you a lot of times when we build a sequence of learning experiences for a course, we can depend on them having done a previous one. So maybe in the first one, we introduce the model we're using. In the second one, we give you practice. In the third one, we do ever. But if you're mixing and matching those, then you may not get one before you get two. So you have to make each module, give it the ability for somebody to take them in any order or not take ones. And so you may have to include redundant information across the modules. Like here's the model that we're trying to have you adopt, and you do that in each of the ones so that you can then mix and match them. So you have to be very aware of the fact that you're aiming for a modular approach.
Thank you. We've also got Amelia, who's specifically wondering about that last project, number 5. Does the AI pick up on the employee's tonality to be able to give feedback on empathy, for example?
Yeah, I mean, great question. In this particular case, and this is what we're talking about. In this particular case, it doesn't, but we build them that do. There are sentiment analysis platforms, and you can send the audio stream over to that platform, and it will. There are many of them that are out there that will. Well, not many. There are platforms out there that'll come back and say they sounded hostile, they were
Mhm.
staccato. They were into, whatever different emotional nuances that are in there, and they work pretty well. But in this particular case, for several reasons, one being just the ease of deployment, and because they felt it was more important to focus on what you're saying than how you're saying it, sentiment analysis wasn't included in here. But great question, because that is a big piece. You may say the right thing, but if you sound disinterested, you sound like you're reading from a script, you need to call that out because it needs to be heartfelt for the heart model to work.
Excellent.
All right. So in this case, global consulting firm, 200,000 employees or something like that. And they recognize that in order to grow, they needed to have a strong pool of people who can manage very large, highly complex projects. In other words, they're high revenue ones, multi-million dollar engagements with other companies. And it takes a special set of skills to handle a team of 100. And when there's high pressure and there's all sorts of client demands, it's a difficult thing to do. And they recognized that they didn't have enough people to handle the growth that they were seeking. So they knew they had to grow really highly qualified leaders to take on these complex projects. They also faced a problem that there was a huge variance in the skills and experience of candidates. This is a global consulting company, and therefore were certain individuals in some places that were much better and more depth at handling complex ones. There were other regions where they weren't as good at it, so they had to accommodate the variations in skills and experience. They also had no global definition of what good looks like. So they didn't really have a competency model that was globally accepted as to say, yeah, these are the things that are indicative of somebody who is able to step into a high complex, high revenue project. So what we did is we worked with them and developed a 17-week competency-based learning experience. And this consisted of classes, large group classes that were led by executives. We broke them into cohort groups to work on individual assignments. There was one-on-one mentoring in here, so you had regular sessions with a more senior leader for them to give you advice and kind of monitor how you were doing. And then they finally came up with a competency-based assessment to measure learners' mastery. And the results were pretty solid. They saw 2% growth in proposals and contract reviews, which is a huge revenue gain for them. They also saw a 10% increase in certifications. And because a lot of this consulting is around has a technical element in it, the fact that the leaders are certified in various areas of technology is an important indicator. And that means that, that they have a objective audited proficiency in certain skills and knowledge. And the learners were big fans. They had a net promoter score of 55, which is pretty darn good. And so what do we learn from this regarding the principles? First one is connective, and no surprise to anyone. The senior leaders needed to be bought in a huge way. They need to be heavily involved. That's why we were doing a lot of the mentoring and the large group discussion. The executives had to do it. These people just aren't going to trust a facilitator up there to do it. It has to be the senior director and higher that is in there telling them this is how you run a highly complex job. So connectivity is a no-brainer. Efficiency, it was an interesting one because this is fairly labor intensive. They can only handle 72 future leaders a year. They realized their cap was at 72. So you can't give it to everybody who wants it. You have to be pretty selective about who gets into the senior leadership program. And this is developed a need as a result. Had to have a way to screen and prioritize candidates. And they came up with an interesting one where there was some allocation based on percentage of revenue across the whole thing. There were objective measures for how, if somebody would be eligible, like a certain amount of years of experience and so forth and so on. But it really caused the company to have to really think through kind of how do we decide who the blessed 72 are going to be. And that, leads to efficiency in that they could focus on the 72, get them done. it became very useful thinking to be able to execute the program. And this is per year. So they can do 72 the next year, 72 the next year, and so on. And regarding adaptive, this initiative kind of forced the organization into coming up with 16 core competencies. So they were able to come up with a global measure of what are the competencies needed for leadership. They broke it, distilled it into 16 core competencies, and you can apply those from a performance standpoint. You can also use it as an assessment in order to say, yeah, you really have to sharpen your skills in this area and that area. So it proved to be a huge boon in terms of uh, both screening people, training them, measuring whether they're there or not. It was a big factor. So, all right. And I'm looking at the time. We've got three more, so I will try to bang into them to give us some time at the end. This one is a global software company, and they were looking to improve how the salespeople sold the company's array of services. A lot of their employees are Gen Zs and millennials, and they just weren't doing as good a job as the company would like at recommending the company's solutions and meeting the customer's needs. This is a highly technical area. There were a bunch of different product lines, and they felt that a lot of their younger sales folk were just not delivering the recommendations and giving the expertise that they had done. They also have a large number of very complex solutions. So this isn't easy stuff. This is things like, they had mobile products, they had programmatic products, there were certain brand products in there. There's a lot of product knowledge to have to master. And another piece of it is they had to feel comfortable offering advice and making recommendations. I mean, if you're a 20-something person out there and you're talking to somebody who's, an IT engineer, has been around it, you may not have the confidence to be able to say, yeah, I think you should do this. I think you should do that. So confidence, which is part of the empowering piece, was a huge piece of it. So what we did is we created a series of modules. They were 80% e-learning, 20% ILT, organized into 5 product pillars. And for each, and this really came from the company, so I would say they had it. They developed 3 levels of mastery, and they used the martial arts belts. So there was a green belt, a blue belt, and a black belt in each of the 5 pillars. And you could display those in your profile. So if you achieve a white belt in mobile products, you could put that up and so forth. And as I'm going to talk about later, it was a huge piece of this, it turns out, for a number of reasons. Having measurable levels of proficiency across the various pillars of content was big. And the results are strong. They saw a very clear correlation between belt attainment and sales performance. So the people who got the black belt typically outsold the ones that had no belts or the white belt, and it was quite there. They had overall higher bid win rate, 16% bid rate, and a higher pitch size. So they have 12%, which means that their the overall revenue coming in, they increased by 12% per sale. They also saw that the sellers did increase their confidence. So they measured confidence pre and post, and they saw that they got a 7% increase in confidence for mobile products, 5 for brand, and 6 for programmatic products, which is, like I said earlier, big. And what did we learn from this? The belt thing is huge. It's both from an empowerment and an effectiveness thing. From an empowerment standpoint, it gave people that confidence to say, hey, I'm a black belt in mobile. The company's telling me I know this stuff. And the company in turn can look at this person and say, yeah, that he's got a black belt. Let's put him into this new role. Let's put him over here. That gives us confidence that we can trust him to carry on increased responsibilities. So it's empowering, working in both directions. And then obviously from an effectiveness standpoint, you can look for correlations between belt attainment and other KPIs like revenue and by product line and so forth. Another thing I want to call out for the intuitive piece is the fact that they recognized very early that they had to anoint what they called curriculum managers. And these are people who know the subject matter well enough that they could actually coordinate subject matter experts who sometimes know stuff too well and therefore have lost all empathy, and the instructional designers who don't know a whole lot of stuff, but they do know how to make people smarter. So these curriculum managers were in there to bring SMEs and instructional designers together so they could determine what do we need to teach, how do we teach it, what's the sequencing of it. And I put it under intuitive because this could have been a confusing blooming, buzzing confusion to the learners, but the curriculum managers created a coherent learning journey in each of the pillars, and it proved to be a pretty central and important element in this. All right, two more. Getting there. All right, first one is about helping engineers communicate better. And as an engineer, I'm very sensitive to this. So, have you ever called up tech support and you're talking to someone who couldn't understand what you're asking for and couldn't give you any help? It's frustrating, right? You hate it. And for a large electronics manufacturer, this is a real problem. Its engineers were all really smart. They knew their stuff, but they didn't know how to talk to customers. So 23% of the customers mentioned this as a problem. It was the customer's number two pain point. And like I said, as an engineer, I recognize it can be difficult to sometimes to get your points across to somebody who doesn't quite have the proficiency you did. So as a result, they developed a multi-tiered learning program for all their engineers, and they organized these into four sections. They also, like the one I talked about previously, they established badges to recognize mastery. It wasn't degrees of belts; it was just simply you're proficient or you're not in that area. And they also had a point system. So as you completed units and got smarter in areas around communication, they acknowledged it with points. And this was a good way to increase learner confidence because as learners saw that they were achieving things, they felt like, yeah, I'm doing what the company wants me to do. This is feeling great. And the results were what they were hoping they would be. Following the training, only 5% of the customers mentioned communications as an issue, which is a big drop. 80% were satisfied with the customer service from the company. And it dropped from the number two pain point to the number six pain point. Now you're going to say, well, it's still a pain point, but yeah, at least it's not the critical pain point that out there. And in fact, communications is one of the top 10 reasons a customer would recommend the company based on customer satisfaction surveys. And so, what principles are in play here? I think the first one is that they recognized that this was a change management thing. A lot of these engineers had been on the job for 10 or 15 years, and if you were to ask them, a lot of them would probably say, "I do a great job. I'm talking to customers every day. I'm giving them great ideas. I'm doing specifications, and I'm doing this and that. I don't need to learn anything about communication." Old dog, new tricks problem. And so they recognized it had to be more than just here's e-learning, let's everyone do it. They did a marketing campaign. They had a vision of this company in the future, and it was an animated thing that they sent out by email to every one of the engineers. They really made it clear to the engineers that this is critical to the success of the company. We have to get better at talking to customers than we did. And so I think from a relevant standpoint, you really have to think about the WIFM, and you have to get people to recognize the importance of what's going on. Another one is from a memorability standpoint. Communication is a hard thing to change. It takes a lot of sustained effort. So reinforcement becomes critical. You can't just have them do 40-minute e-learning and then walk away and suddenly be a gifted orator. They have to work on it, work on it, work on it. So a lot of the learning design looked at how do we do sustained engagement of the learners across the months, many months, in order to truly bring about improvements in the way they communicate. And then also, as I said, from an effectiveness standpoint, yeah, the numbers are there. Drop in pain point, heightened awareness by the customers that communication is now a strong suit. All right, so we're going in the final one. Resellers, like a couple others that I've done, that you want to get resellers to recommend your product. So here's an auto parts manufacturer. They sell through independent dealerships, and those dealerships also carry your competitors. So you're trying to get those salespeople in those dealerships to recommend your product over somebody else's product. Not easy, particularly because you can't just tell them, yeah, you should recommend us. They've got to want to do that. So you really want to get them to want to do that, to get them to recommend you over your competitors. And at the time they undertook this initiative, they weren't doing that. It was ranked last amongst its competitors in providing product training. It also can't mandate that the associates or the people in those dealerships take the training. They could easily not take it if they chose. So you really had to have a strong WIFM. What's in it for that associate to want to come and spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes in an e-learning module, at lunchtime or during a break and so forth. You've got to draw them in. A lot of pull strategy goes into play there. And one of the ways that they had done that is they had a bunch of games and fun activities. So you had like a racing game where you could try the company's products on a course, a simulated course. They had a trivia game that was in there. a bunch of things like that. It was very, very gamey and hopefully engaging in that standpoint to get them to want to come to do it. Used a lot of humor. It had a lot of stories that were in there and engagement just to make an associate want to come back and do it and not dread that moment. And the results are strong. They had 22,000 to date. Well, actually, this as of 6 months ago, 22,000 associates have engaged in the training. 1 million course completions have been logged, and dealerships ranked the training as the best of all of its competitors. So they went from last to best, and that's reports from the owners and managers at the dealerships. This all leads to steady revenue growth because if they are recommending your product, that's going to result in sales. And from a principal standpoint, two pieces that are here. One of which is because this is voluntary, a lot of people poo-poo participation rates as a learning analytic metric because they'll say, yeah, so what? They took the training. What does that tell you about, whether you're being successful or not? But if it's optional, that tells you quite a bit. You can look at participation rates because again, they can vote with their feet. If they think the training is horrible, they walk away. They don't complete it, and therefore if you make training optional, then you can look at participation rates to say, yeah, the more the participation, they must be getting value out of it. And if you're getting value out of it, then chances are we're achieving the ends we're doing it. So it's not, a be all end all metric, but it's a useful one. And then the other one is efficient in that even if they want to take the training, these people probably have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to devote to training because they want to spend most of their time on the dealership floor selling, parts and services. They don't have hours and hours of time to sit down and try to absorb it. And even if they did, they wouldn't learn, it's hard to acquire a lot of knowledge. So we knew that short bursts of fun training over time is going to be more effective and efficient than trying to cram a lot of stuff in their heads at once. So that's those are my nine. And I'm just gonna go into a big wrap up and then we'll leave 10 minutes to handle whatever questions you got. So the transformational design standards, which are the principles that I've been talking about here, come down to 8 questions that you want to ask whenever you're doing learning design. It's like, how can we make this thing relevant? How's it going to be relevant to our audience? How do we make it intuitive so that they can just jump in, start to do training without being bogged down by the interface or by encumbrances that are going to make them focus on that and not what they need to know to get smarter? How do we make this adaptive? Do we have different audiences? Should we treat them differently? Like in the case of the global manufacturer that knew it had a digital and non-digital audience. Be asking about adaptive quite a bit. And then finally, efficient, which is how can we take a minute out of it? Can we take 5 minutes out of it? Do they need to watch the 30-minute video by the owner of the company about the history of it? Is that really critical? Or maybe we drop that out for the sake of efficiency. And then think about, once the learning experience is over, where do we stand? How have we moved toward organizational change? Is it memorable to them? Maybe you want to send a module out 3 months later to just see how memorable it was. What are you doing differently on the job? What are the 5 principles or whatever? Connective. Did we give them, handholds? Did we put them in touch with the coach? Can they talk to their manager? Can they access the system or systems that'll help them? So did we connect them into the organization and the people around them? How is it empowering? I mean, have we given them the tools and the skills so that they can actually behave better? And do they think they can? Have we increased their confidence so that they feel ready to go out in the world and make a difference? And then finally, everyone always asking the effectiveness questions. End of the day, how are we going to measure whether they're doing better in a way that benefits the organization? So like I said, Tiffany just put a link to this one pager. We use it fairly regularly around SweetRush. Very useful way to kind of think through what should be in a design and how should we do it. So there you have it. So I'll go to the next screen and let Tiffany wind it down.
Thanks, John. Deep breaths. All right. So please do reach out to us if you'd like to talk about any of these programs in greater depth, or if you need to drive change at your own organization, and really who doesn't these days. I think everyone here probably knows a little background about us, but just a little bit about SweetRush. We focus on performance improvement and digital transformation strategies, including custom learning, emerging technologies, staff augmentation, talent placement, and strategic consulting. We are incredibly honored to receive quite a few industry awards for the impact that we've made on organizations in a whole range of industries by transforming learners through experiential and immersive learning, AI tools, and of course, boosting employee engagement with memorable, relevant, maybe even enjoyable learning experiences. I am going to drop our LinkedIn contacts into chat. Um, that brings us to our Q&A section, and I see three
Yeah.
questions waiting for us there. If you are scooting away, I do want to thank you for sharing your time with us today. I know we covered a lot. And again, please do reach out if you'd like to dive deeper into any of these topics. You've got our LinkedIn contacts, and we'd love to continue the conversation. I will now dive into the Q&A that we have. Okay. John, I remember that there were a couple questions right here. From Debbie and Sandeep about solution 7, I believe, and do correct me in chat if I'm wrong, folks. Debbie's wondering, what did the certifications look like for solution 7? Demonstration or knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it was knowledge, to be quite frank with you, because we did not include any kind of simulation where you can actually apply your and with number 7, we're talking about the global software company that had the belts and 3 levels of mastery across 5 pillars of learning. It was probably around 80% or more in terms of knowing. Now there were scenario like elements in there, if I recall, where it'd say, okay, a customer is trying to do X and Y, what would you recommend to them? And then you get feedback on that. But I don't believe there was an enormous amount of actual talk to a simulated customer, tell them, recommend them on a product, which would be the skills that ultimately would bear this out. I think this was very knowledge centric.
Hmm. Hmm.
And literally with any of these things, if you'd say, "Gosh, I'd really love to go deeper," then please do reach out. You have the LinkedIn. I mean, Tiffany and I can set you up. These are all cases where our solution architects would be happy to go deeper into the details than I'm able to right now. So don't lose that thought. Feel free to just reach to us and say, "Yeah, tell me more about that particular case," and we're happy to share, how it was built and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. Good. And Sandeep's question was, what, according to you, led to the results for, I believe, solution 7? You shared the what, but can you share the why and how as well?
Well, I mean, and again, if we are talking about the global software company and the levels of it, one thing in terms of the why and how, you know, I don't know if any of you have ever been in a sales position or in a consulting position, but one of the squirmy moments in your life is where you're talking to somebody and you're pretty well aware that they know a lot about something and you don't know as much, and yet you're supposed to be the expert, and it's all crisis and confidence moment, right? And nobody likes that. You want to come in to say, hey, I know stuff, I've been around and whatever. So we're dealing with a lot of Gen Z and millennials here, and it would be easy for them to feel about this. So if you were to say, hey, if you take this training, you're actually going to know a lot, and you're going to be able to give them recommendations and going to be able to steer customers toward better solutions, they'll take it eagerly, if it's directly relevant to the kinds of just conversations they're having on the floor every day. They're going to eagerly take it. And so I think that as I recall on this one, there was no shortage of people wanting to engage in it. Also, the fact that you're acknowledging that, yeah, you've achieved black level of mastery here, that's a source of pride. And I think a lot of these people, as a lot of people in sales and customer facing roles are, they're a bit type A. It's great to say, hey, I've got 4 black belts. How many do you have? And that will motivate some who might have less to come in and go deeper. So I think that establishing the belts and saying these are our norms of proficiency, they're going to love it because they love the results of being able to sound like they're an expert. And ultimately, it's going to motivate them to keep up with the crowd and go deeper. I don't know if that answers your question, but at least you gave me a chance to spend a few minutes talking about the belts.
Nice. Yeah, the belts do sound cool. Okay, this is a question from Russell, and Russell starts with some information here. AI agents, when trained for L&D, can assess learner needs in real time, allowing micro assets to be compiled and learning experiences curated in real time. This is an autonomous learning that Josh Bersin and others have been speaking to in past years as learning in the flow of work evolves through artificial intelligence. Are you seeing
Yeah.
this in practice?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And I only have 1 minute to respond, but I'll tell you quickly, I'm vehemently against this approach. And the reason I'm vehemently against this approach is there needs to be a human in the middle. I mean, we're not imparting knowledge, we're imparting information. And we hope that that gets translated into people's mental models so it becomes knowledge. But the idea that you can have an autonomous Gen AI agent out there freely deciding what somebody needs to learn, how they need to learn it, what order, it's just not going to work. And we've seen this again and again where you need to have some sort of a curricular structure to the learning. You have to realize they need to know this first, this second, this third. And that takes a human being and it takes a human expert who says, yeah, if you really want to be a programmer in this language, this is the right sequence of stuff you go. And you don't just trust Gen AI to somehow magically assemble a course on the fly. So, and our take is and I know that Josh and Marcus Barnhart and Philippa Hartman may have a difference of opinion in that, but I do believe that there needs to be a man in the middle. There needs to be a human being thinking, this is where we want to take people at the end of the day. And then this is the sequence. Now, that said, Gen AI is great to provide answers to questions, to put together things that you might want. Like, just show me these 5 things. It'll do it in a heartbeat. You don't have to go digging around 8 courses on an LMS. So there's value in it, but I just don't think the human should leave the car and let it be self-driven by Gen AI. And I think we are at the hour here, so I want to be
We're at
mindful of
time.
that. But thank you all. This has been fun. I love this stuff. I love talking about it. So please reach out if you love talking about it too. We'd love to continue the conversations.
Yeah, let's talk some more. Thank you so much, folks. Have a great afternoon, and we will follow up with you with the recording and other materials.
Very good. All right.